Hey everyone, Pharaoh Silver here, the Pharaoh of Beer Money Finance, and we are going back to basics in this video today. We are going to be talking about savings accounts. Now, I don't have to explain to, I would say 90% of my audience what savings accounts are, but for those of you that are new to all of this, savings accounts are basically money that you put into, basically, it's like the first line of defense for most people in saving money, basically. So you kind of open an account with a bank. Usually it'll be a checking or a savings account. Now, a checking account usually has a lot more transactions going back and forth. Savings accounts have a little bit more restrictions. A lot of it depends on the bank. Now, back in the day, back when I used to do this in the 90s, savings accounts, you were limited to only 3 transactions per month. They increased that to 6, and now they have increased that even further. So back in 2020, during the pandemic, the Federal Reserve had limited convenient transfers and withdrawals to 6 per month for savings accounts. They did remove that during the pandemic, and it has remained the same since. So a savings account can, in theory, essentially be roughly the same as a checking account. However, a lot of banks do continue to enforce withdrawal limits, some of them, though, with much higher withdrawal limits. So for example, with Ally, for me, they have a limit of 10 per month. Now, if you're wondering why banks continue to enforce these limits, even if they're a little bit higher, most banks, though, that I've seen still keep a 6 withdrawal limit. Something like Ally does give me 10. Now, the reason why they do that is because, well, obviously, mostly for cash flow reasons. So that, and also they want to have you have a checking account alongside a savings account, and they want to continue to do that. So a checking account usually has unlimited withdrawal rates. So you can withdraw as many times as you want. You can write checks as many times as you need. That is a checking account. It does not provide interest. Savings accounts do provide a lot more interest than checking accounts. So if you think about it, why would you ever need a checking account if you can withdraw unlimited times from your savings account? So you see how banks want to try to keep you having to open these accounts. Well, that's part of the reason why they have these limits. And a lot of these high yield savings accounts will have a lot more limits than what you get at your local bank. Now, local bank, they've had savings account limits of around 0.01 to 0.1% for years, since like 2008. However, savings accounts will usually run a little bit lower than your typical 20, 30-year bond. So you see here the rates for 20-year bonds are currently at 5%. The rates for 30-year bonds are currently at 4.75% over at treasurydirect.gov. Now, compare that to savings accounts right now, where the best high-yield savings account is sitting at about 4.3%. And sorry, I'm getting a lot of pop-ups here. So they usually run a little bit lower than your long-term bonds, which makes sense because you're wanting to keep the money for a short time, and these savings accounts you're needing for emergencies. Whereas with bonds or CDs, and we'll look at CDs in another video, you're going to be keeping them for a long-term amount of time, and there's penalties if you withdraw at all. So if you want to check the highest rate of any savings accounts at any time, the best place to go is Bankrate. So bankrate.com, I will have that link in the description below. And yeah, we're going to take a look at some of those high yield savings accounts. Now, a lot of these banks are smaller banks that you're going to get with better rates, but we're going to come down here and you will see some of these rates up here. Now, these are the sponsored offers, but we want to go down here to the additional offers. So this is where we're going to get our order of the rate. And you see here we have Everbank at 4.3%. Bread Savings at 4.3%, Open Bank at 4.3%, and we will make our way on down. But the best ones usually hit around between 4.25 and 4.3% right now. And if you go down to the bottom here, it says offers from banks you may use. This is where you see Chase and Bank of America sitting at 0.01%, the brick and mortar there. Now, I currently have 3.7% with Ally Bank. It's the bank I've been using for years. I haven't really moved my money very much, and that's part of the reason why I keep it there. I did recently, though, get a CD from Discover Bank, and I've kind of just kept like most of my savings account money now with Discover Bank, and I think they're at about 3.8%. So these banks are definitely better than that, but here's the problem with constantly rate chasing, and I want to talk about the main reason why you probably should not always want to rate chase. So if this is the first time that you have a savings account, I mean, absolutely. Go ahead and, get the one with the best rate, whichever one it is, which is going to be one of these four for the most part, but definitely get something with a lower minimum balance if this is your first time. So as of this recording, the two best banks for you would be Everbank and Bread Savings. Now, of course, you want to check on the offer details, and you want to make sure that there isn't any sort of requirement that you need in order to keep the interest rates. For example, a bank like Varo will give you a particular rate, but it will cap it at, I think, $15,000. And then it's like 1% afterwards. But Varo usually has some of the best rates available, but they'll usually cap it like that. And here in the offer details, Bankrate will tell you exactly what the pros and cons are. So with Everbank, the main con being the account does not come with an ATM card, so banking for this account must be done online or through the bank's mobile app. So what this basically means is the only thing that you can use with it is for like ACH transfers and bill pays. You can't go and just make a purchase or something, which is fine because with savings accounts, you get if you have a 6 to 10 withdrawal limit for each of the banks, and this doesn't tell me like how many withdrawal limits there would be for the savings account. So you actually have to go into Everbank and find out how many, what their limit is on accounts, or you can just use like ChatGPT. Actually, that sounds like a really good idea. Okay, let me see here. How many transactions are you limited? How many withdrawal transactions are you limited to with Everbank for their savings accounts? God, that is worded terribly. That's fine. All right, so let's see here. Do they have it? Okay, I don't see anything here. Okay, they focus on daily dollar limits for certain types of withdrawals rather than a monthly transaction count for savings accounts. Oh, wow. So there is no limit. It's just ATM withdrawals is $2,020 a day. PIN-based transactions is $5,000 per day. Non-PIN-based transactions is $5,000 per day. That's not too bad. Okay, how about I go to the website itself and just confirm that? So I checked everything, the FAQs and the fine print, and it seems like there isn't a limit on withdrawals. This is pretty cool. I'm gonna have to call them up. I need to. I might be moving my money very soon, actually. I was gonna sit here and talk to you guys about like, well, you don't want to move money around too much and constantly rate chase because of convenience reasons. Also, if you set up like direct deposits and something that goes to the savings account, it does cause a problem. But like, I don't really have any, like my direct deposit usually goes to my checking account over at Ally. So if I use my checking account over at Ally, then I'm better off to go ahead and just move my money to somewhere like this where there's actually, this is actually not too bad. And also, the debit card is really, it doesn't really matter that much for savings accounts with debit cards in general. You usually use your debit card for the checking account because it's the checking account that you'll get those unlimited withdrawals. As I mentioned before, like the withdrawal limit usually will keep you from being able to do anything with your money. You usually use it as a chance to get your savings account transferred to your checking account. And it's usually really good to pair them together. So have your savings account and your checking account together with the same bank and having a primary bank. Now, the other one here that is zero minimum balance is Bread Savings. I'm going to go to offer details. Actually, it is not a $0 minimum balance for the... Okay, no, there is a minimum of $100 deposit to open. So yeah, it can be open with just $100. However, the cons, Bread Savings does not offer ATM access. Again, not really much of a con for a savings account in general. If you have a checking account, that usually comes with a debit card. So you could just open a checking account alongside it if this is your first time. There are some fees associated with the account, including a $5 fee per paper statement and a $25 fee per outgoing wire transfer. Well, you're going to do a wire transfer maybe most people will do a wire transfer maybe 2 or 3 times in their entire lives. That is not that big of a deal. And I guarantee you Everbank also will have a fee about this similar, maybe even higher for a wire transfer. And the $5 fee per paper statement, I mean, at this point, most of us now go with e-statements anyways. It's way more convenient. We just get them via email. We pretty much use our emails anyways. So these aren't really too much in the way of cons. So Bread Savings isn't too bad either. Let me see if they have a withdrawal limit, though. Okay, let's do, what about Bread Savings? Community Capital Bank. Yeah, rebranding to make it sound cool for the youngsters, I guess. Get that bread, right? Is get that bread still a thing? Okay, let's see here. I don't see anything. They explicitly state that there are no excessive transaction fees for withdrawals in excess of the standard 6, because withdrawals beyond the 6 are not permitted. So it is 6. So they do have a 6 withdrawal limit. All right, so this one, Bread Savings, does have a 6 withdrawal limit on their savings accounts. So you are probably best to open a checking account alongside it if you're going to use Bread Savings. Now, I just went through the 2 best, and for those of you that don't have a savings account, again, this is the best way to do it. If you ask me, the best one for starters right now is probably Everbank. Actually, I might call them up myself and see if I can, see about their account and get a couple questions answered, and I might move the money that I have from Discover Bank over here, actually. Now, one last thing, for those of you that are wondering how much you should put, or people should typically put in their savings account, it's usually, like, some people say 3 to 6 months, some people say 6 to 12 months. I think 6 months is that perfect spot for most people. If you can get 6 months of savings accounts before you actually start investing, that's probably the best option. So, like, make a budget, and we'll probably do the make a budget thing in the next video, because the next video I'm going to be talking about jobs, which is weird. I know this is Beer Money Engine, but we're going to be talking about jobs because it's going to tie together with it. So I'll talk about making a budget for the first part of that video, but for the second part of that video, we'll be talking about jobs, and you'll see how they connect together. But I'm hoping that some of y'all learned something today on like how to get the best rates. Now, again, I would caution against constantly rate chasing. Going once in a while, maybe once every 1 to 2, once every year, once every couple of years, that's not that big of a deal. But if you're just constantly rate chasing and every month, a new bank is on top and you go to that bank and then you're going to switch back and forth, it's going to cause some problems with like your money and all that. And also, not to mention, if you use direct deposit and you try to pass it over to one place because they have a direct deposit requirement, some of these rates will require a direct deposit sometimes. Then, when moving it over to the others and the account's no longer there, then you're going to have some problems too getting your money from your current 9 to 5. So, there's certain convenience issues that you kind of have to look around if you're constantly rate chasing. That might be more hassle than it's worth, and probably you're honestly better off just making up the money playing a game on free cash. I'm not even joking about that. And you guys know how much I've been talking about how much those are a waste of time in a lot of cases. But like, no, actually, you'd be better off just doing that than putting down the time that you need just to chase another, 0.05, 0.04% even. Let's say you have an account with Forbright and you want to move to Everbank, like 0.05% on someone, say even $20,000, right? That is per year. That's an extra $10 a year? Like, yeah, you are better off just or watch ads on Bridge. Please let me know that you enjoyed this by giving me a like, comment on your feelings regarding any of this or just the video. Let me know that you watched it. And don't forget to subscribe to Beer Money Engine. This is the first personal finance video. The personal finance video series is back. Hopefully you guys enjoy this. This is going to continue to be a monthly thing. And a big thank you to my Patreon insiders: SSC Kelly, Disturbed Doge, Sog Wolf, Daniel Bell, Kristen O'Neill, Ashley Stanfield, Josh42, Board Game Sports Network, and Simon Richter. If you want a shout out, go check us out over at the Beer Money Network Patreon at patreon.com/beermoneynetwork. This is Pharaoh Silver signing out. Thank you all for watching. I will see you all in the next video. Bye, everybody.